If we're going to be serious about raising up the next generation, then we have to do it from every seat. Here is from the lead pastors.
What's up, Intern Academy fam? Super excited to be here with some of my friends who are walking this journey out of developing the next gen. This is really a unique group of people because all of them are lead pastors. And I just love that there is a passion to develop the next gen, no matter what seat you sit in, but also know that being in the lead pastor role, it's a unique seat. It has unique challenges. It has unique advantages. And so we're just going to kind of have a conversation today with some of my friends and talk it through. And hopefully this will be encouraging to those of you who are listening as you're kind of exploring developing an internship. Our friends at Leadership Pathway recently put out an article about the excuses that we make to not do it. And we all could make excuses, especially if you sit in the lead pastor seat, to not do an internship. Here's some excuses that they listed in their article. One is that we're too small of a church. One is that we can't afford it, right? That's an excuse we use. Sometimes we don't have the housing, we don't have the housing to be able to house an intern. Maybe we've tried it before and we have failed, or maybe our experience with Gen Z is that they don't want to work, or maybe I'm just too busy. I just don't have time to add one more thing to my schedule, or maybe even thinking it's better if my associates or my team would run the internship program and I stay out of. These are all excuses that we hear. We're going to debunk a bunch of those today, but also they're real. They're things that we think about, and we have to try to figure out how do we work around those things. But the next generation, not only do they need us, but the truth is in the church, we need them. We need to develop them. We have not only open spots, they bring something to us that we don't have, and we have something to offer them that they don't have. And so by design, by God's design, it's on purpose. And so we're just going to hear from some of our friends. I'm going to ask them just to give their intros and just tell us a little bit about how they got started. So Nathaniel, get us started.
My name is Nathaniel Lyon, and I'm a lead pastor in Niles, Michigan, which is the very southwest corner of Michigan, almost to Indiana. How I got started, I actually was an intern when I was a college student. So I really got the bug then. And then I was for several years a youth pastor and was able to run internships. And so when I became a lead pastor, I just knew this was something that I wanted to do and something I believed in for the culture of our church. And for the broader kingdom. And so I just knew when I started as a lead pastor, like this is something that we want to have. And also with my experience as a youth pastor, I knew how important it was to have the leadership of the church buy into kind of what we're doing. And so that's how we got started. We've had, I think, 4 interns since I have been here in my current role. And excited for this conversation today.
All right, my name is Malcolm Tyree, and I am in Dallas, Texas, hanging out at New Vida Church. I've been here for right at 11 years, and we have had the opportunity to have a number of interns through the years, but it's really just been in the last 2 years that we've been part of Intern Academy. And there was a shift that took place for me personally that was really this acknowledgement that Intern Academy wasn't just for large churches. My congregation averages around 150 or so in average Sunday morning attendance. And I had in my mind that Intern Academy was for large churches with large staffs where they could share that responsibility. And it was principally about interns for youth ministry. And we didn't have a youth pastor, and we didn't necessarily have a program that was going to satisfy a full internship the way that I was creating a narrative in my head that wasn't accurate. But I'd had internships in the past because I believe that every person going through the opportunities to discover ministry needed opportunities to learn the hands-on skills. And so I was doing them, but I was doing them on my own. And I was really using them as babysitters, or go get my coffee. No, not really, but those kind of ideas. And then I had some conversations about Intern Academy and really got into the nuts and bolts of what was going on. Went to a coaches summit, and I was like, I am in on this. And it's not just for the associate pastors, because as lead pastors, we need to have others learning what we're doing. And so I'm excited about being able to use the Intern Academy system, but also to be able to host internships and be a coach as a lead pastor.
And I'm Alex. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at Rustic Hills Community Church. And I've been I'm fresh there, so I'm about a year and a half in at this point. But I was serving as a youth pastor for 5 years in North Carolina. And I had always heard about Intern Academy from other pastors and all the cool things going on, and seeing interns through IA at other churches and how well that was going. And I always wanted to get in on it, but because of my unique situation at my church, I wasn't able to. And so when I became a lead at another place, I was like, dude, hey, I'm the boss. I get to decide, what our church is going to support and not now, man. So one of the first things we did is got involved with IA and contacted Chip, and came to the retreat. And just kind of like Malcolm was saying, if I had any doubts, once you go to the retreat or to the coaches summit, I was in after that, after meeting the coaches, after meeting even the interns, after seeing what IA is and what it stands for. I was like, yeah, let's go. So super exciting and glad to be here.
Awesome. My name is Jason McClendon. I pastor the Community Church of God in Macon, Georgia. It's right in the center of Georgia, and I've been here for about 15 years. One of the things that attracted me to the Intern Academy was that I had always been a disciple maker and was always trying to put people into ministry. And I felt that once I heard about it, it was a great fit because it was another way to bring young people into ministry. I put about 9 different people into senior pastor roles. And I think now is a time where, since there's so many openings throughout the Church of God, it would be a great opportunity to link up with an organization that's had great success in putting young people in ministry. So I felt that it was a great fit.
Hey, I'm Erin Taylor, and I am a church planter and lead pastor of a brand new church starting on the west side of Portland, Oregon, called Hope Collective. I've been here for just about a year. Prior to that, I was a lead pastor in Michigan at the Alma Church of God, and that was a great experience for me. The 6 years that I was there, being a part of Intern Academy, while internships had been a part of my experience before, when I arrived at that church, we were already a congregation that was participating in Intern Academy. And so I loved being able to jump in on that structure. And I had a couple of interns with me, following me in the lead role while I was there at Alma Church of God. I think for me, I have a similar story just in terms of my own life and ministry being shaped by internships that I was able to have. In fact, one of them with Nathaniel's dad, just so happens, which was just such an awesome experience for me in college. I think also a big part of my passion is, as a woman in church leadership, especially in senior leadership, I know how important it is for young women, especially, to see that model, imagine it, have that experience. And so I'm really grateful that I think of the 2 women that did internships with me, who are just incredible leaders, and just really grateful to kind of mentor them, not only through ministry, but some of the unique challenges that women might face in leadership in the church as well.
Oh man, that is so good, so good, so diverse in your stories and your experiences, but all the same passion. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits, right? What has been some of the biggest benefits in having interns, both for you as a lead and also just for your church? Who wants to jump in?
I'll kick it off. So for me, one of the major benefits as I think about doing internships as a lead pastor is it caused me to think through my routine. And I really had to think through not just the dynamics of what it is that I was doing, but why I was doing it and how I was doing it, so that I could teach someone else to do it. I think about how I had to teach my teenagers. I didn't have to, but I chose to teach my teenagers how to drive. And let me just tell you that experience did not go the way that I thought it would. I thought that I knew how to drive, and so therefore I could help them drive. And they had been watching me drive all this time, so they would figure out right away what to do. Well, it turns out that it was a lot more complex than that. And I had a lot of scary moments in the car with my teenagers, and a lot of scary moments that played out that I realized that it wasn't their fault, it was my fault. And so as I think about how I taught my teenagers to drive, I think about how interns help me think through what it is that I'm doing as a lead pastor, and helps me systematize different aspects of it so that way it can become reproducible. And that thinking through and giving some thought to how I can systematize and be a little bit more intentional is really one of the benefits that I've picked up from being a part of Intern Academy. It helps me think through my why and my how.
I was going to say a similar thing to start too. You know, it forces you to be intentional about the things that you do, right? There's this lack of awareness sometimes of how much we just wing stuff. But when you're trying to teach somebody else how to do something, it forces you to have better systems because you have to be able to teach somebody else. But I think the other big thing for us is, you know, one of the things that we do is we actually like put Intern Academy and our internships as part of our missions budget. Because we use it as a way to teach our church about the kingdom impact that happens, right? I think there's this underlying thing about internships that, I don't know, we definitely gain from the interns, but there's this element of like, we as a church get to give to the kingdom through what we're giving to this intern. And so one of the benefits it gives is it helps our church see their role in the broader kingdom to say, we're going to invest in this kid. And then everywhere that this kid goes from here, we had a hand in that. That's part of our story now. And that's true just for our interns, but it also helps our church just think differently about everything that we do and the people who work at our church and how all of it is part of our story in the broader kingdom. And it's less about us, but it's a story that we're telling about the kingdom. And I've loved using our internships kind of as a storytelling tool for who we are in the capital C church. And I think that's been a really cool thing for us.
I would piggyback right off what you said. Well, our church actually did the same thing too. And I can't even take credit for it. It wasn't even my idea after, you know, Chip had actually come and spoke at our church, which I think helped our elders a lot with making the decision to bring on an intern once they heard, you know, Chip come. But yeah, they added, we do the same thing. I think we call ours like outreach, or wherever we send our tithes to from the church. IA is one of those for like internships, because they understand that, hey, this is more for the kingdom than it is for, you know, our church. Like, yes, it's going to benefit our church. But it's been so cool seeing, our church's mindset kind of shift through, and IA is helping with that, to where we're not so internally focused. But now we're, just like you said, you know, they're invested in this knowing that, hey, we could never see this kid again, but wherever they go, we got to invest in that church. So that's been super cool. So I would say one big benefit for our church that I've seen, at least among our leadership and our elders, is them get to see the big picture nationally. Like, hey, this isn't just about our church, but this is about the nation and the leadership need, and how there's 500 Church of Gods right now that are looking for pastors and things like that. I would even say too, one thing that our intern really helped us with, and I just see the shift in some of our older people at our church, is when I first got there. And I would say when our intern first arrived about 6 months ago, our church was right around the 120 mark. And I'd say probably more than half of that 120 mark was in the older generation. And there was kind of a divide, not like a toxic divide, but just a natural divide in age groups. And the old people kind of sat over here, the young people all sat over here. And I've seen a lot of that change in the past 6 months that he's been here. And our church is even growing now. Now we're at like the 160 mark. And I really believe that's because, yes, like, you know, the stigma that people have with this Gen Z generation, and they're just lazy, they're on their phones all the time. But when they got to see this young intern come up and spend times with them, and come to the bingo nights, and come and eat dinner with them at their house, and then come up and get to preach, and they got to be a part of that, and they got to pour into him. And it was just really cool to see that older generation all of a sudden start finding favor, not just for him, but for the younger people in the church. And I've seen some of those walls kind of break down. And so I'd say that's one of the biggest ways it's impacted our church.
I love that, Alex. That's so cool to hear. I'm celebrating with you. I echo that. I think the way that it invites all the generations in our local congregation to see and celebrate what God's doing through the next generation is so important. And that's so formative. And when I think about the opportunity that we have in the lead seat specifically to invite interns, we're often inviting them into settings or circles where broader swaths of the church family get to experience their ministry. Other than if they were just focused in one ministry area, but perhaps preaching or co-preaching on a Sunday morning, sitting at a board meeting, that's huge for an intern. Gosh, I think about that from my own experience. The first time I got to do that as an intern, like, whoa, that was so formative for me. And it's really good for our board members to have that experience, to have a young leader at the table. It kind of sharpens the meeting a little bit. It adds a different energy to the room, and it just helps inspire some vision and some imagination in them when that young person's around the table. So I think that's a huge benefit. And I would say too, this is kind of an echo of what Malcolm said as well, but just, personally, it's just a growth moment as a leader, when we're slowing down, when we're teaching, when we're investing. And, so for me, I look back at those experiences as major ministry highlights.
Right. That's awesome, Aaron. I tell you, one of the things that I really appreciated about the interns in our church is that we saw that our church adapted so well to seeing somebody else do ministry. It was amazing to see some of our members give them money, bring them a cake, or just completely, appreciate them trying. I remember the one time when one of our interns preached for the first time, just the love that the congregation gave to him, it encouraged him so much. And I saw that it also prepared our people to prepare the next generation of leaders, and they were really open to doing that. So we were super excited about that. One of the things that I've learned about the interns is being them closer is that it also helped me to think younger. I started out as a young person. I started out as a youth minister, and I thought that I was still in tune, but what it did, it sharpened me in my thinking and to being able to relate to younger people. So I think that really helped broaden my ministry as well, since I had put so many older people into ministry. Focusing on the youth going into ministry really was a tremendous blessing to me personally as well.
Man, that's so awesome. And you're so right. There's not just a benefit for the intern. Sometimes we think it's just for them, but it's actually a way for our church to engage with them, right? Our church can get engaged in developing the next gen. They don't always know how to do it, but when you bring one in, then the ideas start. I'm going to bake them a cake. I'm going to have them over dinner. I'm going to write them a note. And they're all of a sudden now engaged in participating in developing the next gen, all because you brought an intern. That wouldn't have happened, if you didn't bring them in. All right, so that's awesome, man. That's such good stuff, good experiences, different for everyone. Let's talk about then the other side of that coin, right? The reality, the thing that honestly is a hindrance for people even starting because they have challenges, right? And so what have been some of your challenges? What have been some of your toughest aspects for you and even for your church about having interns?
I would say for me, I had heard from a bunch of guys before I started, hey, don't think that this is going to be cheap labor. You're going to spend more time invested in this. And I heard that and I kind of believed it, but I kind of didn't, because I was yeah, what do you mean? I can just give this guy some tasks and send him off and he'll be good. And in a way, yes, especially as the internship went on and my intern was more equipped, I was able to do some of that, and he definitely helped take some items off of my plate. But what I guess kind of what I didn't realize in my ignorance is, usually, your average intern that you're getting is a college student, and they're a young adult, and they're in the most prominent and important time of their life where they're making all these decisions, right? Relationships, careers, college, all these things. And then on top of that, this is their first taste of full-time ministry, and the spiritual warfare that they're experiencing with this is we can probably all go back and remember those times. And, I know we still face that every day, but for them, it's brand new. And so a lot, I didn't realize how much one-on-one time I was going to have to spend with my intern on not just equipping him for ministry things, but just life, like him coming in and be like, dude, I'm struggling with this week. And,
Right.
and this person over here is really cute. Am I allowed to date during my internship? And just walking through, all these things, and it just helping him, not just as a ministry intern, but as a person.
Right.
And I just kind of, in that ate into a lot of my sermon prep time, that ate into a lot of tasks that I would normally be doing. And instead I'm having to sit here and walk through these things with my intern, because they're going through real life, young adult, college things. And I know the enemy's after them. But I also had to remember, hey, that's why they're here. And that's why they have a coach that's going to walk beside them through this new phase of life. And I have to be willing to kind of sacrifice my time to sit down and kind of, just care for them as a person. But I didn't realize how much time that was going to take away from my normal everyday stuff. But well worth it, but just didn't know it was coming. So, yeah.
That's super interesting, because I feel like for me, moving from being a youth pastor to being a lead pastor, my problem has been in some ways the opposite of that, where at our church, we haven't had yet just somebody who is just straight lead pastor internship. We've had some student ministry. We've had some kind of like, I want to experience a little bit of everything. And one of the challenges for me has been from being a youth pastor, where it was very much what you're talking about, Alex, where we were planning all the weekly programs together and we were making events together. And, I had to create tasks for them to be like, please leave my office so that I can do something else for a minute. As a lead pastor, what's been really challenging for me is figuring out, like, if we have a student ministry intern, what's my responsibility to this person? And it's been really challenging for me sometimes to find that kind of intentional time, or the mentoring piece that you're talking about, and trying to figure out what my role is, while also helping create a program at our church that has never had one. And so I thought that I could just bring over my experience as a youth pastor and just plug and play into a new place. And it's really not been that. And trying to figure out, how do I as a lead pastor engage in this process has been challenging for me, because I feel like I'm a step removed from it oftentimes now.
I think for me, one of the toughest parts has really just been trying to find the rhythms that I need to live in and that I need to model for my intern, particularly the rhythm of rest. And the reason I say that is because I'm a high go person. I see a problem, I want to chase it down and solve it, kill it, and all those sort of things. And so therefore I can, model that really, really well. And as a result, it can transfer over to the point that they're showing up as often as I'm showing up. And it's like, no, this is a part-time thing for you. And they're showing up and giving the same energy level to it that I am, which I love, but I recognize that I don't turn off very well. Similar to how our cell phones are around us all the time and we're always on with our cell phone. There's an aspect in which ministry is always on. And so one of the toughest parts for me goes into this mentoring of the intern and modeling for how to go about it, but finding those rhythms of rest in that space. Rest for me, rest for the intern, being respectful of one another's schedule, being respectful of when to shoot the text, when to hold it back, when to expect them to be present, fully on, and when to go, you know what, they're in a moment where they need to catch their breath. I've been doing this for 20 something years. They just started this last month. So that rhythm for me and the rhythm for them is really powerful.
Awesome. That's excellent, Malcolm. I tell you, one of the situations that I've had that was difficult, and one of the ones that comes across frequently is when an intern wants to preach. One of the experiences I had is that I actually sat down and wrote the sermon out with him and went through it. And, this individual preached and the congregation just loved that he did such a great job. And because so much positive feedback, he wanted to preach again. But this time he said he wanted to do it by himself. And so I let him do it, and I shouldn't have done it. But one of the things I saw is that the pressure hit him so hard that he had walked away from ministry for a while because it was the weight of the moment was just overwhelming for him. And so one of the things that I've learned is to slow down and not to let everybody preach when they want to preach, but also to spend some time with them in preparation and try to protect the pulpit and also protect the individual until they're ready.
Another challenge that I've faced, especially in the lead seat in particular, is thinking about what an intern is ready for and what experiences I want to invite them into. So truth be told, I think about the 2 interns that I had with me in Michigan, and for both of them, their internships with me as a lead pastor, it was not their first internship. And I'm really grateful for that. It was their second or third internship. And I think that was the right progression for them because they had a base of some ministry experience. So I think that's one of the things, especially, it is more advanced. It's harder. It can be more complicated when you're seeing some of the inner workings, the challenges of church life, some of the pastoral care challenges, some of the perhaps conflict or tough decisions that have to happen. And so, but all the more so, we really need to provide space for interns to see and experience that. But I think for me, it's just the recognition that it does take a lot of intentionality to think through and discern what is this intern's readiness, what's their prior experience, and what's going to help them take the next step without overwhelming too much along the way.
Awesome.
That's so good. We have Matt Gaylor's jumped on here. Appreciate you, Matt, getting on. Matt, unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about your experience. We talked before about some of the successes, some of the things we love about having it, and also what are some of the challenges?
Yeah. In our specific context, because we have multiple, so like we have 2 coaches here. So Tammy Bird's with me. She does the student ministry side, or has done student ministry side for a long time. Our dynamic's a little weird. So some of the challenges have been trying to figure out which areas we're going to have our intern focus in on, because our interns kind of run like a utility player. They aren't just in one area. They run in a bunch of different. So they're learning how to run inside of the church as a whole, not just in student ministry or just in children's ministry. And so I think I'd echo what Aaron says, like determining what their readiness is and what their giftedness is, and then figuring out how to give them opportunities that are really going to stretch them and where they feel like they're getting some real life preparation. You want them to leave where they feel like, this internship's the best thing that ever happened to them. And so trying to give them the opportunities that are going to stretch them and give those spaces sometimes is hard. The other piece that I find challenging is when we do our internships, we kind of run it off of the old Be With Factor. Bo Shears has this old book called The Be With Factor. And so bringing them alongside you and having them just kind of do everything that you're doing and doing it along with you is kind of what we're up to. And so it's kind of tricky sometimes because you step into some conversations, you step into some spaces there, it's like, hey, this one may not be a good spot for you to sit in on this one, or being present. I also do chaplain work. So I've drug them with me to death scenes and some crazy stuff. And so they're like, whoa, that's interesting. And so sometimes you're like, yeah, why don't you sit in the truck on this one, and so just trying to figure out how to do what we do well, by giving them those opportunities. I would add kind of to the speaking side of it. We always have our interns at the end of summer. It's like the end of their internship. So they've taught in the student spaces, they might have taught in the kids spaces, they've taught or led small groups. At the end of the summer, we have them to actually teach to the entire church. So they do like a Sunday morning. We're small enough that they can do that. Like our church only has like 200 and I don't know, some odd people here. And so it helps our people get exposed to what you're up to. But that's also a pretty big challenge trying to get a kid ready for something like that if they've not done much of it. We've had kids kill it and we've had kids flop. I mean,
Right.
It's just kind of, it's kind of what it is. So
That's awesome. Thanks, Matt. There's so many unique challenges, right? And based on your context and based on the interns' gifting, what their ability is, they come in with these preconceived ideas of thinking a pastor just preaches, and to be able to expose them to the reality of what your real and the things you do on a daily basis, it's just so helpful to pour into them. But it's a challenge, and we mentioned so many different things, how we do it with our time, how we structure with our staff, how we make sure that they're ready for when we hire them, they're ready for the next step. So much good wisdom there. Let's jump into this last question, which is, okay, consider you're talking to a friend who's in a lead seat, who has this heartbeat to develop the next gen, maybe doesn't know how or hasn't started yet. Just what advice would you have for another lead pastor considering interns, and where would you tell them to start? Like what would be some of the first things with their church, with their board? What would be some of the first things they need to do to get started?
I think the first thing, Chip, is that a personal decision needs to be made to make that type of investment into somebody. I know when I started out in the ministry, the Pastor Ronald Hadley, he let me be with him. And he quoted that scripture, how when Jesus called the disciples, he said he called them that they would be with him. In seeing that as an intern, you would have somebody by your side that would be watching you, and also somebody that you can pour into. And so I think that when you're thinking about developing somebody, you want to see somebody that's called to be with you.
I think that the dynamic Jason just brought up there, who you're going to bring on, is really, what I kind of process this in thinking through. It's like, who's going to be the type of person who would take the position that I'm in? Who's going to be the type of person that I would feel comfortable recommending out to another church? Who's going to be the next generation of leaders? I think back, it's a crazy, world we live in and all the different things that go on. But when I was a kid, George Jones released a song, Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes? And he was talking about all the country greats that were passing away and how he just felt like country music was just going away. And there is a dynamic in which we can fall into believing that our way or what we love, what we want is going to fall away. But if we will invest and pour into the next generation, then we will find that what we love continues. It may not look like what we want, but it is what we love. And that sense in which it continues to flow forward and push on is what the church is about. It's going to outlast us until Jesus returns. And if we expect that the church is going to be there helping people grow into the Jesus life together, then we need to make sure that we are helping a young person or a person who is a second career person explore what it means to pastor well. Not to preach, not to podcast, but to pastor, to minister, to serve, to live as Jesus taught, which was that this world, their leaders lord over them, but among you it will be different. You must become the servant. We have to model that, and we have to help them see how they've got some rough edges that need to be worked out, and we need to give them the opportunity for that to happen. And so for me, it was just thinking through this dynamic of who would I want to replace me. I'm an interim, all right, at best. So who's going to come in after me? Who am I going to refer somewhere else?
Awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, the things I'm thinking about when I think about lead pastors and just conversations I have with people, I think the couple things that I think about is first, and I mentioned this earlier, it's really crucial for us. You have to start telling the story with your leadership and your board about how this is a ministry of your church more than it's a ministry for your church, right? the truth is with your internship program, the interns will bring things to your church that are great, but you will give more to your interns than probably they will give back to you. Man, I've been so blessed by so many of our interns, but I frame it as like we are giving a gift to the kingdom. And when you start with that narrative, I think that's a really important place to start. And then I would say that the other thing that I feel like comes up with people whenever they're saying, I want to start an internship, but I don't know how, like you mentioned, Chip, money. So I would just tell them about the great program that we have at Intern Academy called the Genesis Project, which is literally a grant to help people launch internships. We have some great tools for that. So I would point them that way. And then who is it, right? It's a lot of people who say, I don't have young people in my church. I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't know what this is. People show up at Intern Academy and they're like, they think we have 1,000 applicants and we're just waiting to send them places. And I would say the thing I would encourage you to think about is, one, do you have connections through your church? Maybe it's not somebody who's a part of your church, but it's, Sister Sally's grandson is going to school and he's not a part of your church, but it's Sister Sally's grandson and he can go stay with grandma and he comes and works at your church. Or one of my favorite things that we're seeing happening a lot is who interns are changing, where we think of it as it's a 19-year-old college kid who's looking for a job after school. But what we're seeing more and more of is there's somebody in your church now who maybe is 35, 40 years old. They got a family and they're saying, I think God maybe is calling me into something out of the career that I'm in, into a new thing. And maybe the intern that's going to be at your church is not a college kid like you're thinking, but it's going to be somebody who has a kids of their own and God's doing a new thing in them. And we're seeing some of that at our church and it's really exciting. And maybe it's just a reframing on who is this person going to be, which leads to the last thing that I'll say. And Chip, this is something you said to me when I was a youth pastor looking for my intern. And I think it's just true across the board, no matter who you are trying to launch internships. And he said, Chip, you said to me, just make sure that the first intern you have is a rock star because your church will judge every other intern you have based on that first one. So be really careful about picking the first one and make sure the first one's a slam dunk. Even if they are not the best for you, make sure that they win with your church people because that is how you're going to get to have subsequent internships. And so make sure that the person that you choose for your first one is somebody that will win relationally with the rest of your church so that they'll buy into the program. But that's what I think about when you're trying to get started as a lead pastor, just some of the questions that I get asked or I think of.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I would say, a couple things for, if you're a lead pastor looking to get, looking to dive into IA and the potential of bringing an intern up. Like you said, I'm in a unique situation because I'm also the new young guy that's the lead pastor at my church. And so it was not only hard because my church had never heard of IA. So not only had they never heard of IA, they had never heard of me. And so there's, it's they don't fully trust me yet and they don't trust IA yet because they don't know who both of these people are quite yet. And so I kind of had that barrier. And I would say this, one thing that really helped us kind of launch Intern Academy in our church and our elders and our leadership to buy into the idea of raising up leaders and being a part of this process, because it is a financial investment. It is an investment of the pastor's time and the elders worried about where their pastor's time and attention is going to go. Is just prepare your church the best you can by communicating the why. And so I would communicate to the elders, hey, here's why I want to do this, and here's why I believe in IA. And then, I mentioned this earlier, but what really helped put the cherry on top and seal the deal for our church was I had asked Chip to come up and speak to our church and gave him the pulpit one Sunday, and he preached an awesome message, but he also gave the why of what Intern Academy is and the leadership crisis in our country right now and why he does what he does. And after that Sunday, it was like, okay, Alex, we believe you now. Like we get it. And so that helped a lot with getting the ball rolling. And I would also say too is don't be discouraged by the doubts or the misunderstandings or the bad attitudes that your board members or your leadership council might initially have towards this process. Like, I remember getting super discouraged, like, how can you be against something like this? And, and they're just uneasy because they don't get it yet. There's, just things there. And you might think you have the most evil board in the world and all this. And some people might be, but the point is some of the same people that were the most hesitant and had the most doubts and maybe were the most vocal about why we shouldn't pursue Intern Academy are now some of my biggest fans and my biggest supporters of IA because of how well this internship went. And Nathaniel, going off what you said, yeah, I had to bring an intern in that I knew was going to hit a home run, and regardless, it's still a risk. You're still hoping this person works out because you don't know exactly. But the kid that I brought in just did a phenomenal job, built relationships with our church and our older people, and really helped them. And like I said, now some of the most vocal people that were against it or had doubts are now the number one fans. So don't be discouraged if there is hesitancy and there's a lot of dumb questions at first. And then I would just say this is, number 3 would just be have a game plan before your intern gets there. Like, don't make up like, well, I think we're going to focus you over here, whenever they get there. Is have some sort of a rough draft game plan of, hey, for the first month, I want to focus you over here, and I want you to be involved with the children's ministry, and I want you to get with this person once a week and learn from them. And then for the second month, kind of have something like that in place, because trying to do it on the fly, what you don't want is your intern sitting around and saying, I don't have anything to do this week, and them not knowing what they're supposed to be doing or who they're supposed to be learning from. Have something in place so when they come and they sit down day one, you're like, hey, here's the game plan. Here's where you need to go. Because once again, this is a young college student that probably has no practice in structure or organization or how to build a schedule. And so you need to help them at first by giving them some training wheels and a roadmap. And that's super helpful to them. And it's super helpful to your board to show them, hey, I put thought into this. I planned this out. This is a real thing. And we're really going to bless this intern. And when they understand the why and the big picture, then they're usually going to be bought in, and that will help a lot.
Yeah. And to add something that you just said, Alex, like a bunch of people already have a template of what they do, and it changes and edits every year. So ask, someone will give you theirs. Like that's one big piece. On where to start, I think that it's been my experience that anytime we start something, the quicker I can put a face to the story, the better. And I remember like whenever we try to make changes, you might run into some resistance. And as soon as there's a face that like attaches to whatever you're trying to accomplish, people's resistance go way down. And so in the story of the Intern Academy, I think that it was a lot easier for us here because I was the face. I literally told my story. Like, hey, I was a young guy and had no clue what was going on. I didn't even know what an internship was. And I was lucky enough to have a friend who said you should do an internship. I thought she was telling me I should work at a hospital because that's how dumb I was. That was my only context for interns was at the hospital. I was like, okay. And I was like, that's not what I want to do, Abby. It was Abby Long. and I was like, Abby, I don't want to work in a hospital. And she's like, no, you should. And so I literally just start telling my story. Like, I'm competitive. I found out who told me was the best internship. And I just literally tell my story, how I found, intern. It wasn't even Intern Academy back then, but somebody poured into me, gave me opportunities. Literally that was a catapult for me. And then I can point to other people who then we've given that opportunity to, who are now in ministry positions, which has been kind of cool. You can point around and say, well, that kid right there, now he's a worship guy there. He was one of my interns. And this is a guy who was an intern when I was in student ministry. And so when we got here and I was a lead pastor and we're planting and kind of got through the early flux of trying to actually do a plant and we're actually sustainable. And it was like, this is a healthy place to bring a student into for an internship. It was a pretty easy sell because people knew my story. I was the first face. And then when I got other interns in here, they just pretty quickly understood, like, we're going to give them more than they're going to give us. We're preparing them. They may, their future may look like a totally different space from us, but will always be a place that is a launch pad for them. And so it pretty quickly gave influence and lend credibility to what we were trying to do because we had faces with it. And so I think that's where I would always start. Then from there, you're going to have people start asking tactical questions like, hey, how do we fund this and all that other stuff? And those questions are way easier once you've already got a story established.
When I think about an intern getting started in the church, especially when it's a new thing, one of the things that I think works really well is getting as many leaders involved in the process as possible. And one of the ways I love to do that is sort of first assignment out of the gate for the intern is here's a list of maybe 10 leaders that I want you to set coffee meetings with, and I want you to interview them and get to know their story and ask them all about where they serve and their ministry areas and things like that. That's been a huge win on both sides. Not only does it help the intern get to know people in the congregation, but it also helps our leaders begin to form relationship, get excited, have buy-in on the whole thing. I think another part of that's so important that I would just say to other lead pastors, especially who are considering specifically a lead pastor internship, I think one of the skills that we can really help our interns with is helping to exegete the congregation. That's such an important skill to teach, and the lead seat is a unique place to teach that. We talk about exegeting the scripture, but as a leader, as a shepherd's heart, to be able to understand and discern what's happening in people's lives. What are people worried about? What are the big things that people have going on? How are they responding to what's happening in the culture and the world around us? And what do they need to hear from our pastor's heart? So when we're inviting our interns into those kinds of spaces, and we're doing that by helping them build real relationships with people in the congregation, not just watching us. I think that's a really important thing. And then it's also just really fun to watch that naturally happen in the congregation. And then by the end of the summer, you're going, oh, who invited you for dinner? Oh my gosh. Oh, you're going with that family on their day to the lake. That's so cool. And you just begin to see that it's like become contagious. This like, hey, we're all getting to invest in this intern together. And I love when that happens. So I would just encourage, that's a really good place to start, is to really think about it relationally in the life of the church.
Yeah, Aaron, that is such good wisdom, man. So much good stuff there. I love the idea. We do sit in a unique seat, or you all sit in a unique seat of being able to catapult it from the stage, from the main, and I love this trend that's happening where once a year, everybody's talking about their calling. They're having a chance to tell their story of how God called them. They're talking about the crisis shortage of leaders, and just making their congregation aware of the challenges gives purpose to why we bring these young leaders in. And so your story is powerful, and our opportunity that honestly a lot of associates maybe don't have. There's different places for me where always sitting in that seat where I had to fight for stage time. When you're in the lead role, you can cast that vision throughout, and that's a huge blessing opportunity to be. Let's just do this, just a final take, maybe something that you just want to make sure people get as you think about some other leads that might be considering this, or maybe they're trying to overcome some challenges. What's just something for you to say, hey, I just want to make sure you got this. Take just like a little bit of time, give us a final take, and we'll wrap up.
So final take, and you could call it a hot take or you could call it a cold take, but quite simply, church is not a performance of perfection, and it's not even about perfection. Church is at its best when we're here for maturing through relationship. And I believe Intern Academy and working and bringing on interns is a great way to live out that maturing through relationships rather than aiming for perfection.
I'd just say something just real simple, is that I think getting to pour into an intern and knowing that you're sending this person to, you don't know where and where they're going to be in the future, but you know that you're sending them to another church, or whether they're a missionary or whatever, and you're sending them out, and everything you're pouring into them is they're going to impact that ministry across the country somewhere, or maybe even at your church one day. They might even land there. But it is so encouraging. Like, it, you know, it's time consuming. There's definitely, you know, difficulties and things that come with it. But I would say you will be so encouraged from a lead pastor seat of getting to mentor and disciple and pour into somebody. And it almost just reminds you, for me, it's been so refreshing for God just to remind me, hey, here's why you do what you do, you know? And it's been very encouraging for me just to be able to pour into the next guy who's going to take over a youth ministry somewhere, and knowing that I'm getting to make an impact. So.
Yeah, for me, I think my just kind of last thought again is it is the advice that my coach gave to me when I was thinking about trying to start an internship, not as a lead pastor, but I was just like really anxious about it, and there's a lot of questions, and I'd never done it before, and I was like, oh, I don't know how we're going to do all this stuff. And you know, I was connected to a great community of people with Intern Academy, and you can be that too, and we'd love to help you. But basically, my coach said to me, she was just like, look, you guys know this in other things, but there's just some things you won't know until you do it. So if you're on that edge and you're like, I don't know, there's still a lot of questions I have, that will always exist until you just do it. There's some things that you don't know how to do until you do them. And so we want to walk with you. We'd love to come alongside you. There's some great people, like Matt said, steal from other people, but there's just some stuff that you won't know until you just do it. And so if you are here and you've watched this entire video, that's you. And just do it. Just do it. Just go.
Absolutely. I would even say, Chip, that one of the things that was very beneficial to us is that we had to prepare our congregation that the people that we were mentoring, they were not all going to stay, and that we were going to be sowing into the kingdom, and that they would be released. They would be with us for a short while. And that was one thing I had to get over, is that sometimes you fall in love with them because, you know, they're doing such a great job for you. You want them to stay, but remember, they've been called into the kingdom, and so you have to send them out. And so I think it's very important for the senior pastor to remember that even though you're pouring your heart into them, you are going to have to release them into the kingdom.
I think I would just say, do it. Just like everyone else is saying, it is so worth the investment. And I think I'd encourage you be open to people coming from perhaps far away to come be a part, but also keep your eyes wide open in your own congregation and look for some of those young emerging leaders who you might say, you know, would you consider this right where you are? You know, there's an opportunity here for you, because I've seen that as an absolute blessing as well to pour into them.
I think the final word, I mean, if this is like if the final thing I'd want to say to a lead pastor, right, is when you think about the legacy you want your church to be. Like, I want my church to be a community of people who are not just developing disciples, or developing people who are going to go be disciple makers in other places and future church leaders. And to me, I think that it's a cool legacy to have lots of stories that attach to your church that are leading in other spaces and other places. And if you want to make more than just an impact in your community, but you want to make an impact at the global level, it doesn't always mean that you have to have missionaries that you go support. Some of those missionaries are ones you launched. And so you get an opportunity to go and create this amazing legacy. And when you get started, it's going to seem small, and it's going to seem like you're not making a big difference. And it's one kid, it was one summer, and they may have been just like, okay. But when you keep going, and you, as you know, the old saying, you know, long obedience in the same direction, you string together years and years and years of some obedience in that same direction. All those small little pieces become one great story of impact that literally will transform the landscape of the future church. And you're going to be the one through your small little bits of obedience that reshapes generations and generations and generations. And so like you're all saying, do get going, start now, but expect to be someone who's going to be in it for the long haul and have that long obedience in the same direction. And it'll be cool. You'll look back in a few years, you'll be like, man, look what's happening. And then you get 10 years down the road and you'll be like, holy smokes, there's some really cool stuff happening. And you will get to see and bear the fruit off of trees that you've never, you didn't even plant those seeds, but you get to enjoy the fruit of it. And so it's pretty cool.
Man, this has been incredible. I knew we got the top talent here, so I knew this was going to be a great conversation. But there are just so many gold nuggets. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy life to not only encourage each other, but to encourage me. I wasn't actually expecting that, and I just feel so pumped up just being around you. I love doing this with you. I think that's one of my favorite parts, is that we get to walk this out together and try and figure it out together. These are some exceptional people. I would say if you're just listening to this, all of these people, myself included, are available to you. If we can help you, if we can support you, if we can share our story, if we can help you get off the ground, we want you to join in this, because it's just so stinking rewarding to get to do this and to be able to plant these seeds and see it grow on other trees and watch the kingdom of God grow in this way. And it's got some challenges, but also has some incredible blessings that we talked a lot about today. So thank you for being my friend. To all of you, and thank you for taking this journey with me. It's been awesome. I can't wait to see where it goes next. God bless to all of our Intern Academy family. We'll catch you next time.